Psychedelic Sundays. Psychedelic Sundays. Psychedelic Sundays.
Psychedelics are re-emerging into public awareness in a big way. Scientific studies that were once taboo or illegal are now being performed and shared around the world. These studies show that most psychedelics are not only safe and non-habit forming, but also have incredible healing potential when used in a proper context. Entheogens have long been used as catalysts for spiritual and visionary experiences. Many of these, which people report in shamanic journeys, show similarities to those described by Jung in his explorations of human psyche. It could be argued that shamanism, a Jungian analysis, are concerned with what shamans call soul loss or soul retrieval, what Jung might call withdrawal of projections towards individuation. Entheogens have been and are being used in shamanic practice as catalysts for exploring inner psychic realities. These two systems are complementary and mutually enhancing in the process of individuation, which ultimately helps us reconnect to our deepest nature. Entheogens are unique technology that shape and are shaped by the unique social and cultural conditions. Jung had it right that we should live part of our life internally. We should do deep self-exploration, which also means transformation, and then combine somehow in our everyday life the deep knowledge and wisdom that could come from these states. The transpersonal experience revealing the earth as an intelligent, conscious entity.
I feel in previous entheogenic or psychedelic experiences I've had more of the journey of understanding that we are part of it all and we are all connected with one another, with nature, and that we all come from like the same womb. And what I really, really enjoyed about understanding that or having those types of journeys before this ceremony was that wasn't what I had to see this time. And I had I don't know if the courage, but I felt I could be honest with the plant and just telling her like, hey, this is not what I need to see. Why don't you help me see other things?
Welcome to Psychedelic Sundays, and we have the three original members back in the Psychedelic Sunday room. Carolina and Adam. How's it going, Carolina?
It's good. How are you, Satorid?
Doing very good. And Adam, nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to be back with you guys, Satorid, Carolina. Looking forward to this.
And why I'm really excited is to hear you've been traveling and you went back to Peru, and just how's everything going with you, and how was going back to the jungle?
Peru was great. So the main reason of my trip was my mom was getting married, which was quite exciting. But besides that was in Lima, which is in the coast of Peru. I got to go to the jungle. That's where my family is originally from. That's where my dad still lives. And I was down there for 2 weeks. It seemed, it was a whole great journey. I hadn't been to my family's house in over, I don't know, man, maybe 5 or 7 years, which, it's a long time. Lots has changed since then, and I was really looking forward doing this trip. I wanted to do it by myself, and it was great that I got to. It was awesome. For the first few days, I stayed in the city in the jungle, which is Tarapoto, and I got to be with a bit of my family and just being at my grandparents' house. Got to paint there, got to eat from the trees there. It was great. And of course, I felt at the time that I was ready to try ayahuasca for the first time. This is something I've been looking forward for some time. But I just didn't want to go to the city and start asking around. So what I did is I started asking some friends who had been in the same city and knew, to see if anyone knew any shamans around. So I got the contact of 3 different shamans, and two of them were not in town, they were not around. And the third one was doing a whole toma, so a drink that lasts for 7 days, but that was going to happen after I left. So I just figured, I always try to and do psychedelics not only when I feel it's the right time, but when it's easy to access them. So as this wasn't the case, I stopped looking and decided that this might not be the time to do it. If it wasn't, if it wasn't coming to me, maybe it will be another time. So then I realized that the other thing that I really wanted to do while in the jungle was get to paint, get to be away from any city and just go as deep as I could in the jungle. So I started looking for, like a little hostel, just with the basics. And I remember a couple of my friends had been to this awesome little hostel that was 3 hours away from the city. And then 2 hours deep in a boat, you arrive to a very small village. So I contacted the people at this hotel, and they told me they had a place in the city, so I could go and talk to them to, see prices, see what they had available. And that just came from heaven. I went to the place they had in the city, started talking to one of the owners, and realized his space was actually for Tibetan cuencos. I don't know what's the name for it in English. It's the Tibetan bowls, I guess, this music instrument that is also used for therapy. And then I realized they did a bunch of therapies, and while talking to him, I realized that the hostel up in the jungle wasn't just a place to sleep, but it was also a place in the one you could go and do a mix of therapies. The place was owned by 3 brothers. One of them was a psychologist. The other girl, she did some back flowers, and she's trained in yoga and meditation, and they just had all these different therapies. And I ended up going there, and while I was there doing the therapies, I realized they also did ayahuasca drinking ceremonies. But this is not something they charge for. This is just something they do for people that are already there, just in case anyone feels like this would be part of the therapy. And what I really enjoyed about my time there is that it wasn't a scheduled thing, It wasn't like, oh, we'll charge whatever amount of money and you'll get 4 sessions of deep tissue massage and 2 hours of, I don't know, the Tibetan bowls therapy and 1 hour of back flowers. It was very free. And this is something that I really appreciated about this. They were open to me just going to them and saying, hey, I feel like, the Tibetan bowl therapy would be good for later today. Or, hey, today I don't want to speak with anyone. I'd rather just keep to myself and go explore the jungle. And I loved how free everyone felt in this house and how everything worked organically. We all cooked together, and it was actually just the 3 owners, another guy that was staying there, and me. So it was very personal. And then maybe the 5th day that I was there, they were having the ayahuasca ceremony, and I felt this would be like a great closing, or I don't know, I just felt it would be a great part of the whole therapy that I had been going through. And this is something that I really wanted to do alone. So it was the perfect time, and it was the perfect time. It was great. I'm very thankful that I was able to go to this place and that it appeared when I wasn't looking, and everything that happened there. It was quite great. If you guys want, I can get into the the ayahuasca ceremony details in a bit.
Yeah, but I just find it interesting. It's kind of a reoccurring theme that one hears, and in my own experience with doing like mushrooms, when I got to a point to where I was more about doing mushrooms not as entertainment but as some type of personal growth or using it as a tool to help me spiritually, or whatever term you want to use to it. That similar, like I never went to go search it, and it would always somehow coincidentally find its way to me. And it was such kind of like this ritual or habit form that kind of spontaneously would happen, that I would refer to it always as my psychedelic summers. Like there was always some point in the, somehow always around the same time, for some reason something would happen, and that I would never like go and like ask somebody like, I want to take shrooms or whatever. It would just be like someone would call me, or it would just happen, and just like happen like for like 3 summers like in a row, when I was kind of in a sense got the message from the mushrooms, and like was like, okay, and started to learn how, just experimentally, of how my relationship with the mushroom began. When I mentioned it before we started the show, but as I was reading this article about the research of MDMA, and reading more about how their actual therapy sessions go, that they do, it's something like 3 weeks before of non-drug therapy, to build a relationship with the therapist and kind of like, work through some stuff to kind of like open yourself up to, for like trauma. So whatever your trauma is, and to kind of engage with that. And then you go into the sessions, and then from there, to emphasize later to the integration part. So it seems to me, just outside looking in from hearing your story, that all this kind of stuff, kind of like being open to the hero's journey, and this was like your prep towards the actual event, or like the ayahuasca was like, okay, you have like this little journey before I'm ready to like present myself to you. That's just what I got out of it. Adam, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's I've had similar experiences, where you weren't planning necessarily on using a psychedelic, and it just showed up, or somebody showed up at a party and said, hey man, like got a bag of shrooms, who wants to eat some? Or even the time I tried, I never used chacuna and ayahuasca together. The time I used an analog of ayahuasca, it was Syrian root and mimosa hostilis root bark. But even that was when I was like 19, and I was on the website shroomery.org, and I'd been on that website in the chat room for like months, and I had moved out of my parents into my first apartment, and not long after that I hooked up with this guy from Seattle, Washington, who was in Montreal studying neurochemistry at McGill, and he had mimosa hostilis root bark and Syrian root. And this was in like 1999. So this was quite a long time ago. When those kind of things were, you kind of had to search for them. There wasn't maps, and there wasn't. Aeroid was pretty new, and I remember back in the day there was another one that was like Aeroid called Lyceum that we used to get all our information from. But anyway, long story short is he ended up being not far away from me. We ended up becoming friends on the shroomery.org website, and we met up, and that was when I tried the ayahuasca analog for the first time. It kind of just came out of quote unquote nowhere. It wasn't planned. It was serendipity, if you will. So I've definitely had that type of precursor experience to a psychedelic experience as well.
Yeah, there's a great I think it's a Zen saying, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And I had this experience a lot of times with very important books in my life that like helped me develop. Like every time, for some reason, I even had this one experience of this book in the bookstore, kind of like shimmery and shiny to me, and so I got it, and it was actually the perfect book at the perfect time that I was at. And this was this book called Cosmic Trigger by Robert Anton Wilson, and it really helped me. Like looking back, like if I didn't read that book at that time of who I was and where I was at, kind of like, especially to like later on when you take mushrooms or you take any psychedelic or you do any kind of like meditation, you can see like how different small things ripple in your life, and like how the course of your life, you know, certain little things help push you towards a certain direction or whatever. It's just kind of interesting how things unfold like that. But anyways, let's get into your experience with ayahuasca.
Well, before that, I wanted to add, I just remembered one time when I was living with two roommates. One day I'm using the restroom, and on top of the bathroom there's Be Here Now by Ram Dass. You know, it's quite interesting looking, this blue square book with all these symbols and mandala looking drawings. So I started reading it, and I feel it was one of the biggest triggers that I've ever had. And I went one day, asked my roommate, like, hey, can I just borrow this? It's so interesting. I love this book. She's like, oh yeah, you can keep it. Like, it was a gift, but it didn't fit my bookshelf, so that's why it's in the bathroom. But you know, that book, I can say it pretty much changed my life, and it's great how those things just appear in the right time, in the right moment. It's awesome. I love how it works.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I was just real quick, because it triggered it in my own mind, and I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about like Facebook and the algorithms and all these different things that are happening. And there's this article called The Last Days of Reality, and we're just kind of having this talk, and she was saying something about does it always have to be like a negative thing? And I said, well, I think it's, you know, it's kind of neutral. But more than that, I think this filtering process is kind of what always happens with like your perception, right?
Right.
If you have a good day, you notice, you know, the sun rays and the birds chirping and everything falls into place. But if you're in a bad mood, all of a sudden you stub your toe, you drop something, or your food burns, or, you know, you get all the red lights. It's just so funny how much we filter our own, you know, we filter through perception of what reality is, and that affects like this whole chain of experiences that we have. You know, kind of going back to that, when the student is ready, the master will appear. Like if I wasn't searching or in this place of needing that book or whatever, or being open to that book, because I've probably seen that book 100 times in the bookstore, but for whatever reason, maybe I heard a podcast, or maybe my friend, even maybe subconsciously, I heard someone talking about it, so that when I was in this kind of just browsing state, that thing kind of vibrated with my attention, and then that I chose to accept that book and was open and ready to hear what it had to tell me. And that's kind of like similar. I was thinking about as you're going along and kind of being open to the experience, and you're kind of like, oh, it would be nice to have the ayahuasca and it didn't really work out, but that doesn't mean like there's not a lot that this journey in the jungle and being here in Peru can offer me, and just being open to the experiences and how they unfold, and then leading up to coming full circle.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, before I left the city in the jungle in order to go to this smaller community, I had this conversation with my stepmother, and I was telling her, like, yeah, I would love to have an ayahuasca session. If there's any ceremonies happening around, like, that would be great, but let's see what happens. So one day she texts me and she lets me know that there's going to be a ceremony, drinking ceremony that night in the city. And that was around like an hour away from, it was like an hour later that day. And I'm like, wait a minute, so how do you have any more information? Like, how is this, what's gonna happen? And she tells me that the ceremony, it's like you pay, I don't know, it was like 600 soles, so that's like $200, which is quite expensive for an ayahuasca ceremony that only lasts one night. And it was going to be one shaman and 150 people with him, which, that's very fishy. It's so expensive. It's a lot of people for only one shaman. It's 1 hour away, and they were not even asking like, hey, you need to be doing a diet and be in a certain state of mind. And it's not just like, let's drink and go party. So that was very fishy for me, just from one part being like, no, this is not the type of ceremony that I want to have personally. And on the other hand, it just got me questioning and realizing that this psychedelic hype is causing lots of, I don't know if damage, but misplace of how things used to be before. And that was quite interesting, seeing that it might be like a party thing now in some scenarios, but luckily that that wasn't my kind of scenario. So I just said no. But it's crazy that type of things are going down there.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my friend about this because we were talking about a bunch of different things, and my other friend, she was asking me about like microdosing and this and that. Then when I was kind of pondering a little bit more with my other friend, and we were just talking about different things like, the rave scene and all sorts of different things. And I did it, when I was kind of like younger, and not that I have anything against it, but just as far as what I eventually learned how I want to personally use it and my own relationship with psychedelics, that so anyways, getting back to what you were saying, is this, for lack of a better word, the gentrification of psychedelics, right? Of
right.
It kind of being this thing that you do on the weekend. We kind of mentioned this before in like the first show, but it's like something you do and then you go back to work, and like that was the whole thing. That, not that I don't doubt like there's benefits to microdosing, but for me, there's like something about, I think they're missing the point if you're doing it to be more efficient in your job. Like, so you could be more creative in like Google to like, to be more efficient as a, for lack of a better word, like a cog in the machine. I was like, I don't know if that's not my preferred way to use it, or I mean, like what you were saying, to do it in this mass-produced way is something that has this potential to be an entheogen, something sacred, something that could be deep, and having like 100 different people there with only one guide and the money that's involved in it, it's like a concert, and like, well, I don't know if I necessarily want to use it in that way, and that's definitely something I was kind of interested too in. You read different stories about what's going on, and so it was interesting that you brought that up.
It's something that I've seen discussed also in groups on Facebook, the ayahuasca groups and what like that. There's all kinds of discussion going on about gringos opening centers down there and, catering to the jet set elite and charging $10,000 for a week for, a ceremony and things like that. And, I heard it explained. I guess what I want to say is like the wisest response I heard to that is the kind of people that can afford to spend $10,000 for a week in the jungle to take ayahuasca as a spiritual retreat. That's the only way they do it. They would never go to the jungle to sleep in a cot in a little wooden shack to do ayahuasca. they're used to luxury. They're used to, you know, food being prepared for them. They're used to those kind of things. And if that's what it's going to take to get those people that are, you know, in the upper echelons, let's call them, of society, the decision makers, the business owners, the doctors, the surgeons, the engineers that work at Google and Facebook that are writing the programming for all these news feeds that are brainwashing us and stuff like that, I don't know if that's necessarily all bad. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there's definitely other things that ripple through where greed comes into play with the shamans and things like that. It's definitely, there's no easy solution or answer to, you know, mitigate the problems that having rich tourists in the jungle can cause to the local people that are living in the jungle. But you know, I personally kind of have, quote unquote, faith in that the experiences that these people are having are going to ripple out into society in ways that might just benefit everyone. Like, you know, Steve Jobs having taken LSD, like, you know, he mentioned several times that was one of the most important experiences of his life. So if there's other people that are having most important experiences of their life and they're paying $10,000 for it, well, it's maybe better than them not having the most important experience of their life because they didn't want to sleep on a hammock in a little wooden shack with no running water, you know, that type of thing. That's where I'm coming from. But yeah, I definitely do want to hear also about Carolina's experience, so I'll pass the mic.
I'm 100% there with you with the fact that, yeah, if people want to spend more money or need to do that, that's totally fine. We all need different things. And, you know, some people need to be in the shack, some people need some more luxury because we are afraid of different things, and different things make us feel comfortable, and whatever it takes for us to connect more with ourselves, or, you know, be true to ourselves, or just listen to what we feel or what we think for a moment, that's great. And I'm 100% there. For me this time, it took being in the shack and not having running water and all those things, because I can get distracted, I guess. But I don't know, being there was quite the experience. It was quite magical for me, and I'm very thankful that it happened at the time it did. I'm glad, you know, when I was younger and I visited alone with my parents or just with my sister, they would tell us like, hey, there's a ceremony happening tonight. Do you guys want to join, or do you want to join, whatever? And it wasn't the right time. And well, during the ceremony, I understood why it wasn't the right time. And I feel in previous entheogenic or psychedelic experiences I've had, you know, I've had more of the journey of understanding that we are part of it all, and we are all connected with one another, with nature, and that we all come from like the same womb. And what I really, really enjoyed about understanding that, or having those types of journeys before this ceremony, was that wasn't what I had to see this time. And I had I don't know if the courage, but I felt I could be honest with the plant and just telling her like, hey, this is not what I need to see. Why don't you help me see other things? So to make this more clear, why don't I just start telling you guys how my trip went? So it was the shaman, me, and a third guy. What I really enjoyed was the fact that we all got together, and the whole day we spent the day together. We cooked together. We talked to each other about, you know, our fears and our doubts and what were we doing there, and just getting to know a little bit more of each other. I was quite excited. I feel like wanted to know ayahuasca for a long time, and I was just very looking forward what would happen. We all drank similar amounts of the mix. The shaman was the one saying how much everyone should drink. And I started picturing myself. I closed my eyes and I started picturing myself walking to meet her. And just, I started feeling all this warmth moving up and down throughout my body. And after a time, I puked a little. At first I was resisting that. We were talking with the shaman and he was suggesting trying not to purge very quick, just because that would make the plant not be very active in our bodies and all of that. But it was quite necessary for me. So after a time, I drank again. And all of this was with my eyes closed. We were all sitting down, not laying down. And she appeared. And I don't know, it was very warming. And I felt lots of trust. And everything visually seemed to remind me a lot of my artwork. I just felt I was in the universe's womb, and that not like she was trying to tell me like, hey Caro, forget about your mom's womb and that you are the daughter of this and that, like just come back to not even being human or where we come from, planet Earth, just come to the womb of creation of it all. And I think that was necessary just to feel safe and comfortable, and that I was in a safe place in the one I could feel trust. But after a time, I realized I could just stay there the whole journey, and that's something I didn't want to do. The main reason why I went to the jungle and I wanted to do this therapy is because I feel that for the past years, I've been working a lot on trusting myself. And instead of living in my inner world, I feel like for the past 5 or 6 years, I've been doing my own therapy of kind of coming out, expressing myself and sharing what I do. And I feel that's been part of my artwork growing more, and me feeling more trust in what I'm doing, and just being able to blossom not only to the inside but to the outside world. But I feel that some days I'm just not able to do that. Like I lose all the trust that I'm growing on myself. So the main reason why I wanted to go and do this therapy was to understand why like those little things still happen, like why I have these days in the ones I don't know, like I have lower energy and I feel like not that, I don't know, sharing is not worth it, and all these things that come with feeling depressed. So I was quite glad that at that moment I was able to tell the plant like, hey, thank you for showing me the womb. Thank you for showing me we are all coming from this place and that I'm safe. But I really want you to show me Carolina Arévalo's journey, like my journey. Why am I feeling this way? Let's go and work on that. Like, let's not get distracted in how beautiful it is that we are all together. Just please come with me and let's work on this and show me more of my, like, about this human experience that I'm having now. And that as soon as I was thinking that, all the visuals that I was having just disappeared, and I had this very, very deep stomachache. And as soon as I had the stomachache and I thought what I just told you guys, the shaman goes to me and he's like, I think you need to drink one more time. There's some more things you need to see and you'll need a little more. And I don't know, that was quite interesting how he could know that like a phase of the ceremony had ended and a new one was starting. So I drank for the third time and my stomachache just increased a lot. I have a very acid stomach. I have lots of acid bacteria in my stomach, and I've had that for years. So, I'm always doing like special diets to get my stomach to be more alkaline and balance it out and whatnot. But this time I felt it wasn't because of the acidity, but it had something to do with what I was there to learn. And I also felt the trust in the shaman to ask him if it would be possible to lay down and play one of the Tibetan bowls on top of my stomach. I felt that would help me understand and the plant tell me more of the journey. So I tell him that, and he says, yeah, for sure, that sounds good. He somehow understood where I was coming from, and I lay down and he puts the Tibetan bowl in my stomach. He makes some rounds of sound and then takes it out, and he says, all right, so before we continue doing that, why don't you put your hands on your stomach, close your eyes again, and listen to her again. So I did that, and you know how whenever you guys touch your hearts, it feels pumping, and you can feel it pumping from the inside. That's the same way it felt from my stomach, but it was moving. Like, it was almost as if I had a baby in my stomach, but it wasn't a baby. It was just me and the journey that I was going through. So he says, just close your eyes, feel that, and listen. And for me, that was the most important part of it all. I understood that, hey, this is not a baby, this is myself, and this is this light that I have with me that I'm scared to share with the world. Like, I'm able to share some of it, but there's part of it that I'm still scared to share it because of rejection. And I could just see myself inside my stomach saying like, hey, just let me go out. Like, I'm making you have all this acid inside of your stomach because I need to get out of your body somehow. And that's why sometimes I get like skin rashes. And she was just explaining me like, that's just me. Like, all these physical reactions you've got throughout time, like skin rashes or acid in your stomach or nail fungi or whatever, that's just me screaming at you and saying like, hey, I'm here, I'm inside, like, just get me out of here, like, come on, let's live together outside. So I know that was very impacting for me, just hearing myself being like, hey, I'm light, I'm here, I'm trapped. Let me go outside. And that was pretty much it. That was the most important part of the whole journey. And I also really enjoy the fact that instead of just being like, oh, okay, I understand, thank you for showing me goodbye, I ask like, all right, but how do I do this? You know, like, okay, this is a great idea, but it's ethereal. Like, what can I do in my daily day life in order to get this light out? So in between this conversation with me or with a plant or with my light or, you know, this thing, she's just telling me like how to actually do different things, physical things, day by day, step by step. And also one of the things that I'm trying to remember every day is whenever you're oversharing, people will let you know like, hey, or either they will go away or they will somehow let you know that you've already shared enough and that's fine and this and that. So that was pretty much it. And I was still trippy for around 2 more hours. And this is funny, every time I've had a psychedelic experience for the last hour or two, I'm just feeling, okay, I want this to be over so I can sober up, so I can start doing all these thoughts and all these learnings that I just went through. Like, I feel it's time to do something with it, you know? And this happened again. So for the last 1.5 or 2 hours, I was just very thankful to be there, but also thinking, okay, now I need to act in order to make things change, in order to put all of these new teachings in practice. And I went to bed, and next day I just started doing all the things that I've been more afraid to do in the daily basis, you know, like little stuff like, oh, maybe I should cook breakfast for everyone in the house, but what if they don't like what I cook? Those like double thoughts, just, okay, whatever, just do it. And that's pretty much how the last 1.5 months have gone.
Oh, Carolina, hearing that story really resonated with me a lot. There was a lot of parts of it that brought up memories and feelings and emotions for me. And I really like what you had to say about when you know, you could have stayed in the womb forever, but you wanted to know how to make changes in your life, and you kind of put that out into the the vibe there that you were having, and that's something that I've kind of never really done. Whenever I have an entheogenic experience, I kind of really just lay back and let the ocean take me where it takes me. I never really stopped and said, hey, wait a minute, I want to learn this. Can you show me this? And like, I don't know, it was just like hearing you say that was like this big moment for me where I'm like, you can do that? And I don't know, man, next time I journey, I'm gonna maybe give that a shot, because I think it's true. A lot of the reasons that if I end up feeling depressed or bad or whatever, if I get down in the dumps for a little bit, it's usually because I'm not doing the little things. I'm not getting up on time. I'm hitting snooze an extra 2 times on my alarm. I'm not eating right when I get up. I'm waiting 2 or 3 hours until I start to get cranky and hungry before I have my first meal of the day. Or I'm not drinking enough water, or I'm not getting enough exercise, or, you know, I'm eating too much junk, or I drank too many coffees, or whatever it is. You know, it's those combinations of all those little things that make you feel good. And when I'm not doing all those little things, that's usually when I get off track. And you know, it just, I don't know, hearing you say that was just like a new concept for me with psychedelics. Like, wow, you can say like, hey, can you show me this? That was really, really inspiring to hear. And I'm really glad that you shared your story, because yeah, I have a smile on my face now, and it was really cool to hear that.
It's funny though, for me, this is the first time I was ever, you know, that never crossed my mind either. Usually just what you're saying, sit back and let the ocean take you. That's been me for years, but this time it was like, no, like, this is not what I'm here for, like, come on. But I don't know, it was just like, hey, I felt like, hey, I know you, I trust you, like, I know you won't get mad for me saying this, but please help me out with this. It was quite interesting because it came from a very sincere part in me being like, can we please go and talk about this, or show or journey through these emotions? It was very different from everything I've experienced before, just feeling able and feeling the welcomeness of being able to say that, or even feeling it. You know, I've never felt like, oh, why don't I ask the mushroom to show me this? Oh no, maybe I shouldn't. I've never felt that necessity or curiosity for that matter. But you know, maybe this time I just felt the urge. I think something I wasn't seeing. I feel in previous entheogenic or psychedelic experiences I've had more of the journey of understanding that we are part of it all, and we are all connected with one another, with nature, and that we all come from like the same womb. And what I really, really enjoyed about understanding that, or having those types of journeys before this ceremony, was that wasn't what I had to see this time. And I had I don't know if the courage, but I felt I could be honest with the plant and just telling her like, hey, this is not what I need to see. Why don't you help me see other things?
Psychedelic Sundays. Psychedelic Sundays. Psychedelic Sundays.
But this effort at communication is slightly more personal in that it's an effort to impart one idea that came out of an involvement with psychedelic substances. My idea, it is idiosyncratic. It is a psychedelic idea, certainly, but it's only one of an infinite possible set of such ideas.